Good morning. Can you hear me in the jail?
Good morning, Your Honor. I can.
Okay, excellent. Can I have Shane Zimmer?
Zimmer,
Yes.
you step right up to the bench. You'll be able to talk back and forth with her.
Okay, you Shane Arnold Zimmer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we're on the record in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Shane Arnold Zimmer. Counsel, can I have appearance, please?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James Gately, Assistant Public Defender, appearing on behalf of Shane Zimmer, who is present via the Polycom system.
Thank you. And Mr. Zimmer, today is the date set for arraignment. I have a felony complaint here. It alleges that on or about January 23rd, 2022, at the area of 645 East Jolly Road, Apartment 4, which is in the city of Lansing, Ingham County, state of Michigan, that you did allegedly, contrary to law, commit the act of assault with intent to do great bodily harm, less than murder or by strangulation, and that you did make an assault upon a Laura Zimmer by strangulation or suffocation, contrary to Michigan Compiled Law 750.84. That's a felony with the maximum penalty being 10 years or $5,000 in fines. Your DNA is to be taken upon arrest, and a consecutive sentence may be imposed under the law if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. There's a count 2 of domestic violence. It alleges that you did make an assault or an assault and battery upon a Laura Zimmer, your spouse, and or resident or former resident of your household, and that this is contrary to MCL 750.812. Restitution is likely, as this offense may have resulted in damage to another individual's property or physical injury or death to another individual. This is a misdemeanor with the maximum penalty being 93 days in jail and or $500 in fines. Again, a consecutive sentence may be imposed under the law if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. There's a third offense notice. It says, take notice that the defendant was previously convicted of assaulting or assaulting and battering his or her spouse, former spouse, an individual with whom he had a dating relationship, an individual with whom he had a child in common, or a resident or former resident of his household, or of knowingly assaulting a pregnant individual by violating Michigan Compiled Law 750.813 on or about January 3rd, 2019, and by violating MCL 750.812 on or about October 18, 2011, and therefore upon conviction will be subject to enhanced sentence under MCL 750.815, which makes the misdemeanor a felony, the domestic violence a felony, with a maximum penalty being 5 years and or $5,000 in fines. And a consecutive sentence may be imposed under the law if assault was committed in a place of confinement. Mr. Zimmer, do you understand the charges read there and the penalties you're facing as a result of those alleged charges?
Yes, I don't understand the one about a pregnant woman, ma'am, because we have not had kids for over 30 years. So I don't understand what it's come from. It was 30 years
That's
ago.
why it had or. It had an or. So the enhanced or third offense notice that enhanced the domestic violence, it indicates that you previously were convicted for assaulting or assaulting and battering your spouse or former spouse or an individual with whom you lived with or had a dating relationship, or an individual that you had a child in common with, or a resident or former resident of your house, or of knowingly assaulting a pregnant individual. So one of those categories is what you have previously been convicted of according to this complaint, okay?
So it'd be something that happened 30 years ago. You guys, this is gonna be brought up to me today? And I don't understand.
It says here there was a conviction for January 3rd, 2019, which is not 30 years ago. There's another one for October 18, 2011, which is not 30 years ago.
Your Honor, I think I can clear up the confusion here for Mr. Zimmer. The statute is domestic violence or knowingly assaulting a pregnant person. It's all under the same statutory section. There is not an allegation that you knowingly assaulted a pregnant person, to the best of my knowledge, in this incident.
Okay. My youngest son is 32 years old.
Mr. Zemmer,
Okay,
It-
okay,
it-
so we don't,
it's irrelevant.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. Okay, thank you.
okay, so do you understand the charges and the maximum penalty associated with the charges?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I do understand now.
Okay, thank you. You have the right to be represented by counsel. Mr. Keithley is representing you for the purposes of your arraignment today only. You have the right to have an attorney represent you at each stage of this criminal process. If you cannot afford to hire your own attorney to represent you, you can request court-appointed counsel be appointed so that it'll be at the expense of the public. Do you understand that, right?
Yes, Your Honor, I do.
Okay, is he requesting court-appointed counsel?
He is, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Zimmer, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say verbally and anything you put in writing will, can and will be used against you. You have the right to plead guilty. You have the right to plead not guilty. And you have the right to stand mute and move through the process of this criminal prosecution. You have the right to have a preliminary examination within 21 days of today's date. At the time of your preliminary examination, you have the right to have the prosecution bring sufficient evidence to establish their burden of probable cause. So they would have to establish that there's probable cause that a crime was committed and probable cause that you committed the crime at the time of preliminary examination. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. If this matter is to proceed beyond the stage of the preliminary examination, you have the right to have a jury trial. Or you can waive jury trial and have a non-jury trial, but at the time of trial, you have the right to have the prosecution then prove each element of the charge against you. They have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. You understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. You have the right to be considered for pre-trial release from custody. We'll discuss that in a moment. For the purposes of his arraignment, how would he like to plead?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
The court will enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf. Mr. Zimmer, are you currently employed?
No, ma'am, I'm disabled.
Is your current home address the 645 East Jolly?
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
Okay, what's your phone number?
It's 517-749-9058, ma'am.
You're currently scheduled for a probable cause conference before Judge Stacia Buchanan on February 3rd, 2022 at 8:30 in the morning. Your preliminary examination is scheduled before Judge Buchanan on February 10th, 2022 at 9:30 in the morning. Did you get notice to appear with those dates on it, sir?
Yes, Your Honor, I did.
Okay, very good. Mr. Keithley, did you want to address bond?
Thank you, Your Honor. We would be requesting a personal recognizance bond in this matter. Now, I recognize that Mr. Zimmer is facing some pretty serious charges here. And additionally, he has recently been convicted of similar allegations involving the same alleged victim. I would note that throughout the entire case, Your Honor, he didn't have a single bond violation. He's never failed to appear for court, and he was recently released from swift and sure probation in front of Judge Kennedy without a single probation violation. Now, of course, we are only looking at allegations at this point, but given both his history of appearing for court and compliance with the court's orders regarding his ongoing cases, he doesn't present at this time as a danger to the public in spite of the violent nature of these offenses. So with all of that in mind, we are requesting a personal recognizance bond. As to the address, recognizing that he does live with the alleged victim in this matter, he and I did discuss the fact that there would be a no contact order. He understands he wouldn't be allowed to have contact with the alleged victim in this matter. He intends to stay at the VOA shelter, at least temporarily, until he can get on his feet regarding finding an alternative place to stay, but understands he wouldn't be able to go to his home where the alleged victim lives, and he wouldn't be able to have any contact with her. Thank you, Your Honor.
I have reviewed his prior criminal history. I see at least 4 violent or assaultive convictions on here. I would disagree that he's a danger to the community based on that. I recognize these are just allegations, but they're very serious allegations. They're allegations that represent an assaultive behavior and violence. So that does present a concern for the court. I will grant the request for a PR bond, but it will be with GPS tether. Bond will be set at $2,000 personal recognizance with GPS tether. Mr. Zimmer, you're not to be within 1,500 feet of wherever Laura Zimmer lives, works, goes to school. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor.
You're not to have any contact with her directly or indirectly. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you know what indirectly means?
It means by phone, mail, otherwise, I guess, Your Honors.
Or
Please
it could
forgive my
mean you have
ignorance.
it could mean you asking someone else to contact on your behalf. There's not to be any communication between the two of you during the pendency of this matter. Do you understand that?
I understand, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, out on bond, you're not to use, purchase, or possess drugs or alcohol or marijuana unless you have a valid prescription. You're not to engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to travel outside the state without prior approval of the court. You're not to purchase or possess a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. You need to report to pretrial services within 48 hours of your release, and you will be reporting to them weekly, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any questions about your bond conditions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, any additional matters for the record?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
You're all set, sir.
Mr. Zimmer.
Okay, Brikel Miller. Okay, are you Brikel Miller?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're on the record in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Brikel Laquise Guilford Miller. I don't have a file number. Counsel appearance, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James Keithley, Assistant Public Defender, appearing on behalf of Mr. Miller for the limited purposes of arraignment today.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, today's the date set for arraignment, and I have a felony complaint here. Alleges that on or about January 22nd, 2022, at the area of Burnway and South Waverly, City of Lansing, Ingham County, State of Michigan, that you did allegedly, contrary to law, commit the act of weapons carrying concealed. It alleges that you did carry a dangerous weapon, to wit, a pistol, whether concealed or otherwise, in a vehicle operated or occupied by said defendant, to wit, a black GMC SUV, and that this is contrary to Michigan Compiled Law 750.227. This is a felony. The maximum penalty is 5 years or $2,500 in fines, and there is a mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device required under the law. There's a count 2 of weapons, firearm possession by felon, and it alleges that you did possess a firearm when ineligible to do so because you had been convicted of carrying concealed weapon, a specified felony, and the requirements for regaining eligibility had not been met. This is contrary to Michigan Compiled Law 750.224F. That's a felony. The maximum penalty is 5 years and or $5,000 in fines. There's a mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device required under the law. Do you understand the charge there and the maximum penalty associated there, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You have the right to be represented by counsel. Mr. Keithley is representing you today for the purposes of your arraignment, but you have the right to have an attorney represent you at each stage of this criminal prosecution. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney to represent you, you can request that there be court-appointed counsel at the expense of the public. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Has he applied for court-appointed counsel, Mr. Keithley?
He is applying for court-appointed counsel, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Miller, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and anything you put in writing can be used against you. You have the right to plead guilty. You have the right to plead not guilty, or you can stand mute and continue through this criminal prosecution. You have the right to proceed to a preliminary examination within 21 days of today's date. You have the right at the time of preliminary examination to have the prosecution establish the burden of probable cause. So they have to establish there's probable cause sufficient that a crime was committed and probable cause sufficient that you committed the crime. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You have the right to proceed to jury trial in this matter. You can waive your jury trial and have a non-jury trial. At the time of trial, you have the right then to have the prosecution prove each element of the charges being brought against you. You have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand those rights?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You have the right to be considered for pretrial release from custody. We'll discuss that in a moment. How is he pleading today?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
We'll enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf. Mr. Miller, are you currently employed?
No, not right now, man. I'm doing like spare work, like yard work, as in shoveling and snow. I'm looking for a job currently, but I am at LCC. I'm enrolled at LCC. I'm a college student.
What's your home address?
814 North Martin Luther King.
Is that a house?
Yes, ma'am.
What's your phone number?
The police currently have my phone, but my mother's phone number is 517-505-4183. I can be reached there right now for the moment as being because I don't have my phone.
Okay, so your mother's number is 517-40 what?
No, 505 and 4183.
505-4183. And what's your number?
517-303-2890.
We're currently scheduled for probable cause conference for me, Judge Simmons. It's gonna be courtroom 4 on February 4th, 2022 at 1 p.m.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
have a preliminary examination on February 11, 2022 at 8:30 in the morning. Did you get a
Yeah.
copy of your notice to appear, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Keith, did you want to address bond?
Thank you, Your Honor. We would be requesting a personal recognizance bond in this matter. As I understand it, there's not an allegation of any violence associated with this case. Additionally, as Mr. Miller indicates, he's not currently on probation or parole. While he does have some prior criminal history, as I understand it, he has no history of failing to appear for court. He saw that case all the way through. He seems to be an individual who's going to appear for court, not try to flee the jurisdiction. And based on the fact that, as I understand it, he doesn't have any violent convictions, doesn't present as a danger to the public.
I'll grant the request for a personal recognizance bond. Bond will be set at $2,500 personal recognizance. While out on bond, sir, you're not to use, purchase, or possess alcohol, marijuana, or any other controlled substance without a prescription. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You're not to engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to travel outside of the state without prior approval of the court. You're not to use, purchase, or possess a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You need to make sure you report to all of your future court dates. You need to report to pretrial services within 48 hours.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any questions about bond, sir?
No, ma'am.
Any additional matters for the record, counsel?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. You're all set, Mr. Miller. Brian Miller. Are you Brian Miller?
Yes, ma'am.
On the record in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Brian Keith Miller, counsel appearance.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James Keithley, Assistant Public Defender, appearing on behalf of Mr. Miller for the limited purposes of arraignment today.
Thank you. Today's the date set for a arraignment. I have a felony complaint. Mr. Miller, it alleges that on or about January 22nd, 2022, at the area of South Waverly and Burnway, City of Lansing, Ingham County, State of Michigan, that you did allegedly in count one commit the acts of weapon carrying concealed, that you did carry a dangerous weapon, to wit a pistol, whether concealed or otherwise, in a vehicle operated or occupied by said defendant, to wit a black GMC SUV, and that this is contrary to MCL 750.227. This is a felony, and the maximum penalty is 5 years or $2,500 in fines. Mandatory forfeiture of the device or weapon is required under the law. There is a count two of weapons, firearms felon or possession by felon. Says you did possess a firearm when ineligible to do so because you had been convicted of delivery, manufacture less of 50 grams of controlled substance, which is a specified felony, and the requirements for regaining eligibility had not been met, contrary to MCL 750.224F. That's a felony with the maximum penalty being 5 years and or $5,000 in fines. Mandatory forfeiture of weapon or devices required under the law. Mr. Miller, do you understand the charges that were read there and the maximum penalty attached to each charge?
Yes.
Okay. You have the right to be represented by counsel, and Mr. Keefe is representing you today for your arraignment, but you have the right to have an attorney represent you at each stage of this criminal prosecution. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney, one can be appointed to represent you at the expense of the public if you economically qualify. Is he requesting court-appointed counsel?
He is, Your Honor.
Mr. Miller, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say, anything you put in writing can be used against you. You have the right to plead guilty. You have the right to plead not guilty, and you have the right to stand mute. You have the right to proceed to a preliminary examination within 21 days of today's date. At the time of preliminary examination, you have the right to have the prosecution establish probable cause that a crime was committed and probable cause that you committed the crime. Do you understand those rights, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
You have the right to proceed to trial in this matter, and you have the right to have a jury trial. At the time of trial, you have the right to have the prosecution then prove each element of the charges being brought against you. They have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. You understand those rights?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The purposes of today's arraignment, is he pleading not guilty?
He is, Your Honor.
Court will enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf. Mr. Miller, you're scheduled for probable cause conference before Judge Cynthia Ward in courtroom 1. It's going to be February 4th, 2022 at 9 o'clock in the morning. You have a preliminary examination before Judge Ward on February 11, 2022 at 8:30 in the morning. Did you get a copy of your notice to appear?
Yes, ma'am.
You have the right to be considered for pretrial release from custody. We'll address bond in a moment. Are you currently employed?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are you employed?
BJ's and Eastwood Town Center. BJ's, I'm sorry, BJ's.
Okay, thank you. What's your home address?
2014 Williams, Lansing, Michigan, 48915.
What's your phone number?
517-885-8739.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
Parole.
Okay, Mr. Keithley, did you want to address bond?
Thank you, Your Honor. We would be requesting a personal recognizance bond in this matter. While Mr. Miller obviously has some criminal history, given the fact that he is currently on parole, as I understand it, he doesn't have any history of failing to appear. Your Honor, noting that Mr. Miller is on parole, I believe a personal recognizance bond is appropriate here. If nothing else, if he is held in custody locally while this matter is pending, it is likely to result in him sitting on dead time. We would be asking that he be granted personal recognizance in order to make sure that he can at least get started on a parole sentence while this matter is pending. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, you said a parole, he doesn't have a parole hold at this time, does he?
Not to the best of my knowledge. However, Your Honor, given that this is a new felony case, I anticipate that he will be getting a parole hold.
Court will grant the request for personal recognizance bond. Bond will be issued at $2,500 personal recognizance. While on bond, you need to make sure you report to all of your future court dates. You need to make sure that you do not engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to use, purchase, or possess alcohol, marijuana, or any illegal controlled substances. You're not to use, purchase, or possess a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. You're not to travel outside of the state without prior approval of the court. You need to report to pretrial services within 48 hours. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Do you have any questions today, sir?
No, sir. I mean, no, ma'am, sorry. Sorry about that. No, ma'am, thank you.
No problem. Any additional matters for the record?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
You're all set, sir. Last name Cothran. Okay. Is your first name Zaina?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're on the record in the matters of the people of the state of Michigan versus Zaina Cothran. I have here file numbers 22-00061 and 19-02838. Counsel appearance, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James Keithley, Assistant Public Defender, appearing on behalf of Ms. Cothran for the limited purposes of arraignment today.
Thank you. Ms. Cothran, today's the date that's scheduled for arraignment. I have in file number 22-00061 a misdemeanor complaint that alleges that on or about November 24th, 2021, at the area of 1042 Bench in City of Lansing, Ingham County, State of Michigan, you did allegedly, contrary to law, commit the act of domestic violence, and that you did make an assault or assault and battery upon a Jeffrey Hill, an individual with whom you have a dating relationship, and that this was contrary to Michigan compiled law 750.812. Restitution is possible as this offense may have resulted in damage to another individual's property or physical injury or death to another individual. This is a misdemeanor with the maximum penalty being 93 days and or $500 in fines. A consecutive sentence may be imposed under MCL 750.506A if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. There's a count 2 of larceny, less than $200. It alleges that you did commit the offense of larceny by stealing a phone that belonged to Jeffrey Hill. The value of the stolen property was less than $200, and that this is contrary to MCL 750.3565. That's a misdemeanor, and the maximum penalty is 93 days and or $500 in fines, or 3 times the value of the stolen property, whichever is greater. To impose a fine of 3 times the value, the defendant must admit the amount, or it must be determined by the trier of fact at trial. Do you understand the charges in that file, ma'am, and the maximum penalty?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, file number 19-02838 is actually City of Lansing, not State of Michigan, versus Zaina Cothran. I have a misdemeanor complaint here alleging that on or about March 28, 2019, that you did allegedly operate a vehicle on a highway or other place open to the general public, including any area designated for parking of vehicles at or near the area of 3222 South King, which is in the City of Lansing, State of Michigan, Ingham County, while being a person with a blood alcohol content of 0.08 grams or more per 100 milliliters of blood per 210 liters of breath or 67 milliliters of urine. This is contrary to the provision of the Lansing City Ordinance 402.02 Michigan Vehicle Code, that being MCL 257.6251B. Maximum penalty in that charge is 93 days and or $500 in fine. You understand the charge there and the maximum penalty associated with that charge?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, it looks like you did post a bond on that file back in April of 2019 that was forfeited.
Yeah, I showed up to the court hearing that they gave me. When I got there, they told me that there was no pending charges at that time and that my bond would be reissued back to me. I haven't heard anything since then.
Okay. Well, ma'am, you have, in both of these files, you have the right to be represented by counsel. Mr. Keithy is representing you today for your arraignment, but you have the right to have attorney to represent you on both files at each stage of the criminal prosecution. You understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
If you cannot afford to hire an attorney, you can request court-appointed counsel be appointed to represent you at the expense of the public. Is she requesting court-appointed counsel?
She is, Your Honor.
Ms. Cothran, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and anything you put in writing can be used against you. You have the right to plead guilty. You have the right to plead not guilty. And you have the right to stand mute. You have the right to have a jury trial on each file. At the time of jury trial, you have the right to have the prosecution prove each element of the charges that are being brought against you, and they have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you have any questions about those rights?
No, Your Honor.
Is she entering a plea of not guilty on both files?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, are you currently employed?
Yes,
Where are you employed?
I'm a manager at Taco Bell.
Which Taco Bell?
The one on North Larch Street.
What's your home address?
107 Normandy Drive, Lansing, Michigan, 48906.
And your phone number?
517-918-2102.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
No, Your Honor.
File number 22-00061. You're currently scheduled for pretrial conference before Judge Buchanan. It's going to be February 7, 2022 at 2 p.m. Did you get a copy of your notice to appear on that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, on the other file, I don't have any information. I don't have what judge is assigned to, nor do I have a court date. So that information will be provided to you at another time, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Keithy, did you want to address bond?
Thank you, Your Honor. We would be requesting a personal recognizance bond in regards to both of these matters. As Ms. Cothran indicated on the record, she is employed. She works full-time at Taco Bell. Additionally, she does have 3 minor dependents for whom she provides care and custody. While there is an allegation of violence as regards the SM file, as I understand it, she has no prior criminal history. Additionally, she has no failures to appear for court. She does have stable housing separate from any alleged victim in this matter. So she, and I did briefly discuss the fact that there'd be a no contact order. She understands she would not be able to have any contact with the alleged victim. She presents as an individual who's going to appear for court and not violate the court's order. Based on all of that, we would request that she have a personal recognizance bond.
Thank you. File number ending in 00061. A bond will be set at $500 personal recognizance. File number ending in 2838. The bond will also be set at $500 personal recognizance. And I recognize, ma'am, you paid a cash bond on this in 2019, and you say you didn't hear anything back, but you know there's something pending now. And we don't have a date for you, so you need to make sure, if you don't receive a notice in the mail, that you're following up with the court or with the attorney, that if you get one appointed to you, to find out when your court date on this matter is, okay?
Okay,
While out on bond, you need to make sure you report to all of your future court dates on time. You're not to engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to travel outside of the state without prior approval of the court. You're not to use, purchase, or possess alcohol, marijuana, or any other controlled substance without a prescription. Do you understand those conditions, ma'am?
yes, Your Honor.
You're not to possess a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. On file number ending in 00061, there will be a no contact order as to Jeffrey Hill. You're not to have any contact directly or indirectly. Do you have any questions about what that means?
No, Your Honor.
You're not to be within 1,500 feet of wherever he lives, wherever he works, wherever he goes to school. Do you have any questions about that?
No, Your Honor.
Any additional matters for the record, counsel?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. You're all set, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Comanche Clay. Are you Comanche Clay?
Yes, ma'am.
On the record in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Comanche Clay. I have 3 files here. Two of the files have file numbers. One file is file number 21-03130FY. The other file is 15-02855. Counsel appearance, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James Keithley, Assistant Public Defender, appearing on behalf of Mr. Clay for the limited purposes of arraignment.
Okay, Mr. Clay, in the new file, I do have a felony complaint. Alleges that on or about January 22nd, 2022, at the area of 1321 North Martin Luther King, City of Lansing, Ingham County, State of Michigan, that you did allegedly contrary to law commit the act in count 1 of controlled substance, delivery, manufacture of methamphetamine, that you did possess with the intent to deliver the controlled substance methamphetamine contrary to MCL 333.74012BI. That's a felony with a maximum penalty being 20 years and or $25,000 in fines. There's a count 2 of failure to stop after collision. It alleges that you did drive a vehicle, to wit, a Buick Regal, upon a public or private property, to wit 1321 North Martin Luther King, which collided with another vehicle, to wit being a white GMC and silver sedan, which was attended or unattended, and you did fail to immediately stop said vehicle, and there was either locate and notify the operator or owner of such, of his or her name, address, or report the collision forthwith to the nearest or most convenient police officer when such owner could not be located. And that this was contrary to Michigan compiled law 257.620. That's a misdemeanor with the maximum penalty being 90 days in jail and or $100 in fines. Let me stand the charge there, the maximum penalty associated with that charge.
Yes,
Can you speak up, please?
yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Clay, you have the right to be represented by counsel. You are represented by Mr. Keithley today for the purposes of your arraignment only. You have the right to request court-appointed counsel to represent you if you cannot afford to hire your attorney on your own and you economically qualify for court-appointed counsel. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is he requesting court-appointed counsel?
He is, Your Honor.
Mr. Clay, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say verbally, anything you put in writing can be used against you. You have the right to plead guilty. You have the right to plead not guilty. You have the right to stand mute. You have the right to have a preliminary examination within 21 days of today's date. At the time of preliminary examination, you have the right to have the prosecution establish the burden of probable cause that a crime was committed and probable cause that you committed the crime. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
You have the right to proceed to jury trial in this matter, or you can waive your jury trial and have a non-jury trial, but at the time of trial, you have the right to have the prosecution then prove each element of the charge against you. They have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. You understand those rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is he entering a plea of not guilty, Mr. Keithley?
He is, Your Honor.
We'll enter your plea of not guilty at this time, and we'll address bond in just a moment. Are you currently employed?
No, Your Honor.
What's your home address?
As of right now, I'm staying with my father. Well, I was staying with my father in Northville, Michigan. Up a 6 Mile road. I forgot the exact address.
What's your phone number?
517-894-2021.
Currently scheduled for a probable cause conference on this file before Judge Stacia Buchanan in courtroom 2 on February 3rd, 2022 at 8:30 in the morning. And then you have a preliminary examination before Judge Buchanan, and that's going to be on February 10th, 2022 at 9:30. Did you get a copy of that notice?
Yes, ma'am.
File number 21-03130FY. You previously arraigned on this matter. There was a $15,000 10% bond. You were scheduled to have a probable cause conference on November 24th at 9 a.m. and a preliminary examination on December 2nd at 9 o'clock in the morning. You did not appear for the preliminary examination?
No, Your Honor,
Why is that?
because I was off of heroin and I was too high, looking for my next high to show up. And I know that's not no excuse, Your Honor. I need help. Need rehab. Bad.
Well, it's good that you're recognizing that you need some help. Well, that matter is scheduled before me. We'll get you a new court date. I don't have one at this time. That matter will be reset for PCC and do PE. Mr. Keithley, who was his attorney?
His attorney in that matter, I believe, is Mr. Palmer from my office.
Thank you. File number 15-02855. Looks like you owe a large amount of restitution on that. You still owe $1,297. I think the starting balance was $1,445. And since the time of 2015, well, when was it? 2016, you have not paid much on that. Do you have a plan about your repayment on that restitution?
Yes, Your Honor. I had a job interview next week.
Okay, well, you'll talk to collections about a payment plan or your plan on that one. Mr. Keithley, did you want to address bond?
Thank you, Your Honor. We would just be requesting a reasonable bond as to both of these matters. Of course, Mr. Clay did fail to appear. He didn't offer anything in terms of an explanation or an excuse for his failure to appear. Given the fact that he apparently has a drug problem, as he indicated on the record, it would likely be in his best interest to have a period of forced abstinence and perhaps some counseling for that while in custody of the jail. Given that, it seems that what would be appropriate here would be a reasonable bond. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, file number, or the new file that is, I'm going to issue a bond of $25,000 cash surety. While in the custody of the jail, I'm requesting that they do a substance abuse assessment and provide any counseling that they can while you're in custody. If you're at a post bond, sir, you need to make sure you report to court, to all your future court dates on time. You're not to travel outside the state without prior approval of this court. You're not to use, purchase, or possess alcohol, marijuana, or any other illegal substances. You're not to purchase or possess a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. You're not to engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You need to report to pretrial services within 48 hours of your release. Do you have any questions about those bond conditions?
No, ma'am, $25,000 cash surety is, I have to have $25,000 cash to bond out.
Or you can get a bondsman. That's on the new file. I'll get to the other file in just a moment. File number 21-03-130FY. Bond we set at $10,000 cash surety. All your previous bond conditions on that file will continue. Do you have any questions about that bond?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Any additional matters for the record, counsel?
No, Your Honor. Not as regards these matters. Actually, it appears that Mr. Clay has a couple of City of Lansing misdemeanors. I didn't address. I believe he may have failed to appear on those.
Your
I just
Honor,
have 3 files here today. I don't have any other files.
Your Honor,
Yes,
The 2 other ordinance files were $100 cash surety bond on it. I just granted them the PR bond on those since they were low bonds that don't meet the requirement on a weekend arraignment.
sounds good.
I have no further matters for the record then, Your Honor.
Thank you. You're all set, Mr. Clay. That's all I have in the jail, correct?
yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.